Righty, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening to talk about the first section of McIntyre Creek Greenway. My name is Bert Lynn. I'm the Capital Planning Division Director for Park and Recreation in Mecklenburg County. I'm joined tonight by the planner for this project, James Williams, the project manager for this project from Mecklenburg County Asset Facility Management, Jen Brooks. We've also got Katie Lloyd, who is our senior planner within the capital planning group at Park and Recreation as well. Our group, along with our consultant team, will share some high-level information about Greenways and provide you some specific information about this project. We will have a chance at the end of the call to open up the line for questions and comments. Next slide, please, Jake. Thank you. So before we get started, I wanted to walk you through some of the features of our virtual meeting platform. It's important that everybody stays muted throughout the presentation. We are recording this presentation and we'll post it on a project page and on the county's YouTube channel. In case you have friends or family who are unable to join us tonight, they can get caught up with everything that we talk about and discuss. You'll notice a button on the bottom left of your screen. Make sure there's a red slash through the microphone there, and that'll make sure that you're muted. There will be an opportunity to ask questions toward the end of the presentation, either by unmuting or using the chat feature. At that time, you're free to turn your video on if you'd like. If you have questions or comments throughout the presentation, please use the chat function. There's a button on the bottom of your screen to bring up your chat box. So let's give that feature a test. If you would, please type your name, your zip code, and your favorite place to walk or bike. And that could be within a park. It could be along one of our Greenway trails or another Greenway trail in the area. It could just be in your neighborhood. We got 2 votes, including mine. That really doesn't count for Little Sugar Creek Greenway. Latta Nature Preserve. I know we just had the Fairy House Festival out there this past weekend. Latta Park. Same area. Hornets Nest Park. I had a feeling that we would hear from about Hornets Nest Park. All right. Thank you all for sharing that. You can continue to do that if you'd like. Next slide, please. So like many of our projects, this project takes a very large team to pull off. Our primary consultants, or our lead consultants for this team, is Coles, Nest and Stone. They are overseeing the project and also providing landscape architectural and civil engineering. ECS is serving as our geotechnical engineering firm. Hazen is providing environmental science and structural engineering. G2 Inc. is doing our cost estimation. Palacio is doing project specifications. And James Money and Associates are our surveyors for the project. Along with posting the video for tonight's presentation, we'll also post the PDF, and we'll follow up after this meeting with an email with links to everything. And actually, Katie just posted that link in the chat feature. So tonight you'll hear from Jake Bachman, our consultant from Coles, Nest and Stone, who will walk you through the specifics of this project. And then once he's completed his presentation, we'll open things up for questions and comments. Before that, I'd like to introduce James Williams, planner for this project, who's going to walk us through some high-level information about our Greenway system.
Thanks, Bert. Thanks for everyone for being with us this evening. I wanted to first start out with some historical significance of the McIntyre Creek. McIntyre Creek is a living link. It's a living link to Charlotte's history. And it is the Hornet's Nest connection, or Hornets connection. And you know, we always hear about the hive and the hornets and the pestilence of the hornets. McIntyre Creek is a part of that. The historic McIntyre Farm site, which is only a half a mile south from Hornets Nest Park, it was the site of the 1780 Battle of the Hornets Nest, or Battle of the Bees. And at that battle, history says that 14 local farmers, 14, they defeated General Cornwallis and his band of British troops. And so the Greenway will be located in Hornets Nest Park. So it's significant in that part that it's very, you know, regional in this context. And when Hornets Nest Park was purchased, it was purchased for a district park. And eventually it just grew and grew and grew. And today it's 40-acre park. So the park was 1975. It was first purchased, and it was originally a part of the McIntyre Farm site. And that's kind of interesting too, because we believe that the farm eventually did encompass Hornets Nest Park. And along the creek there were battles that were a part of that Hornets Nest and Bees battle. A little bit about the park. It's 140 acres, as I said. It has everything in it from BMX bike to active recreation, tennis, athletic fields. It also has an 18-hole golf course that's international or nationally recognized. It's like, I guess, the Freedom Park for the West. At one point, it was cruising. It was very nice on the park, probably telling my age a little bit, but people would cruise along Hornets Nest. The park also is very well used for family orientation. It has an indoor pavilion, and it has 8 picnic shelters throughout the park. Oh, fishing, I forgot to mention that since I like fishing. Fishing, and also it has a pier. And the pond is actually stocked. And so we have a lot of activities in the park. And we just encourage people to keep using it and keep coming out. And the Greenway would just be another amenity that we'll be adding to the park. The other thing about the creek is that it's a 3rd order headwater stream, and it draws directly into Long Creek, which eventually joins the Catawba River. And so it's important in the creek network. And a 3rd order, but a stream that is a 7 order is considered a river. So you sort of get an idea of what we're doing along this creek. Next slide. Greenways are very important to us. Greenways are strips or vestiges of urban areas set aside for recreation use and environmental stewardship. They connect people and they improve the quality of life. And that's one of the reasons we're in the business of doing Greenways. Next slide. Greenways are the #1 amenity. That's the other reason we're in the business of serving the public. It's the #1 requested amenity from the public. The current master plan calls for over 300 miles of greenways along creeks and 200 miles of urban trails, which would be greenways along roadways and also urban centers. Next slide. Currently, there are more than 61 miles of greenway trails. And the idea, we have a plan to add 30 miles of trails by 2023. We're aggressively doing that. And this will definitely be a part, this 0.95, we will include that into the tally. Next slide. This map currently shows the accelerated Greenway plan, and the blue dots represent projects funded through our 5-year capital improvement plan. McIntyre Group was funded through capital improvement plan, and it was fiscal year 20 capital improvement project. It's also the one that's the circle in the red dot. Next slide. This slide here just depicts, again, you know, where McIntyre Greenway sits into the total Greenway master plan. how it's connected a network of greenways throughout Mecklenburg. Next slide. Gets us to our schedule, which is good. We are aggressively working on the design and going into the permitting. We feel good about some of the construction, design development drawings that we're moving towards permitting. So that's ongoing. We're doing that as we speak. We look for bidding to start in the fall of 2022. After that, we'll go into construction that winter, and hopefully will be completion of the winter of 2023. And during this time, we will take and pay specific attention to not disturbing some of the amenities in the park, and also some of the connecting roadways, and making sure that everything as far as logistics and mobilization is taken care of. At this time, we turn it over to Jake, and he's going to lead us through the process.
Hey, thanks, James. Hope everybody's doing well. I want to start by giving just a quick overview of where we are, the project, and then we can go into a little bit more detail along the entire length of the current project. So what you see here outlined in yellow is the boundary of the existing Hornets Nest Park, along with land that was purchased by the county to help facilitate this project. The line that you see in magenta, the solid line here that you see in magenta, is the current scope of this project, which is about 1.4 miles for this segment of the McIntyre Creek Greenway, which starts at the Beatty's Ford intersection of the park project of the park, Hornets Nest itself, and terminates for this phase at the Clarence Field Drive and the Truell Street neighborhoods to the south of Hornets Nest. The line that you see indicated here, which is a dashed magenta line, is the future extension of this project all the way up to the Long Creek Greenway. But the area that we see in the solid line is the current funded scope of this project. So we're going to start down here, and we're just going to work this project backwards. But a few things to note while we have the overall aerial up is obviously the intersection of Beatty's Ford Road here. This is the main entrance of the park with the baseball fields and visitor parking, along with the pavilion and the ponds in the center. We also have the disc golf course, BMX facility, and play areas, and then the tennis courts down here adjacent to the neighborhoods. McIntyre Creek is located here. So we're going to start with the neighborhood connections. So this project in the first phase contemplates two neighborhood connections, one to Clarence Field Drive here, and the second one up here at Truell Street. Both of these connections are connecting to existing sidewalks, CDOT maintained sidewalks within the communities. We're connecting these Greenway neighborhood connection segments with a 10-foot wide asphalt trail, combination of asphalt and concrete. There are sections, as you notice here, that start to meander. Those sections are to maintain ADA, Americans with Disability Act compliance, so that all users of this greenway are accommodated. You'll also notice in this location, this is a tributary of McIntyre Creek. We are proposing a creek crossing in this location. That method of creek crossing is known as a low water crossing, which we'll show some examples of as we get further into the slides here. And what is not depicted on this graphic, but is important to note as we go through the total segment, is, as James had mentioned, being sensitive to the environmental features located not just within the park, but surrounding the park and adjoining these communities. We're proposing to cross many of these wetland features in the lower lying areas with elevated boardwalk as to not impact the wetlands. You'll also notice the yellow hatched areas, which overlap some of the Greenway segments. And those are Charlotte Water sanitary sewer easements. So as part of this project, we work with Charlotte Water to try to locate these facilities, Greenways, within those easements. That way we're clearing and disturbing as little as possible when implementing the projects. And you'll see that as a continuous thread as we work our way back into the park from Clarence Field and Trill Street. And below are a few existing photos for those of you who are not familiar. This is the, excuse me, this is the tributary, the McIntyre Creek tributary that we'll be crossing. The yellow line is approximately where the bridge, for lack of a better word, will be located. So the fact that it's called a low water crossing is a little deceiving. It does span the entire creek at a relatively high elevation. Next, we have the connection to Trill Street, which what you can't see on here is the sidewalk connections that we will make to the left of this picture. And then the connection to Clarence Field Drive, which also has sidewalks located on it. So working our way up, here's Trill Street again. So we're going slightly further into the project and getting into Hornets Nest Park. Again, you'll notice that the Greenway follows the Charlotte Water easement to the greatest extent we can. We're also meandering around some jurisdictional wetland features to avoid impacts to some of the existing wetlands located within the project. At this point, you'll see this kind of square. This is where the future extension to Long Creek will eventually take place, which is indicated here with the dashed magenta line. Again, we have another creek crossing. This is the primary. This is McIntyre Creek, not the tributary, but the larger creek. We'll be implementing the same type of crossing, so a bridge type structure, concrete structure to span the bridge. This one will sit a little bit lower from the bank than the one that we talked about located next to Trill Street, but in all, it will be a very similar style structure. And you also notice as we start to kind of meander outside of this creek crossing, we're taking into account a lot of the larger trees, existing vegetation and wetlands. And again, in this area, we have elevated boardwalk to span a lot of these features. At this point, I'd mentioned that we were connecting to the Trill Street and Clarence Field Ave neighborhoods with a 10-foot wide path. At this point, this path will widen out to 12 feet for a section, and we'll go into more of that as we get into the next couple of slides. So the picture on the left is what I wanted to highlight and what I had mentioned about meandering around some of the larger vegetation. A lot of this area is floodplain and it's floodway. It's directly adjacent to the creek. It does flood a lot. There's some interesting vegetation. There's some large trees. This project was also part of a restoration at one point, and it's fairly heavily wooded and vegetated. We want to be responsible in where we're aligning the trail and the methodology that we use to protect these features. And then the middle picture is a picture of the existing Charlotte Water easement. And as you can see, it sets up really nicely to use as a greenway alignment, since it is already cleared and is regularly maintained. And then the picture on the right is the location of the creek crossing at the actual McIntyre Creek section. So moving further into the site, which we were just down here, you'll notice the tennis courts. This is where we start to get into the park and the functions of the park. You can see a lot of these lines with circles on them are disc golf, which is very popular within Hornets Nest, within a lot of Mecklenburg County parks. We've worked very closely with Charlotte Disc Golf to do a couple of things: avoid conflicts between people that want to be out playing disc golf and people that want to be out using the greenway. Sometimes those two users don't necessarily have the same goals. So we've worked with them very closely to either maintain separation from the disc golf course or to assist in relocating some of the holes. And what you see here at this is T11. This is actually the biggest effort probably that we had with Charlotte Disc Golf. This straight segment of the trail is an existing fairway for the disc golf course, which is already cleared and has been maintained. There's a lot of tree canopy still, but it's an ideal section to implement the trail. So we worked with them to relocate the tee box far enough away to avoid that conflict. The other thing that you'll see located here is a Piedmont natural gas easement, which we are crossing once. We're working with Piedmont Natural Gas on the exact location, but that is one of the larger features that is in this part of the project. And some photographs of the gas easement here. We are crossing approximately in the location where my hand is shown. And then just a couple of pictures of the disc golf course. The picture that is in the middle is the fairway that is already cleared that we will be utilizing for a portion of this greenway. And then just an example for those of you who don't know what disc golf is, not everybody does. This is an example of one of the holes for disc golf. And then lastly, so we were just in this location where my hand is. You can see some of the disc golf holes here. Lastly, we start to leave the disc golf course for the most part. There is disc golf throughout the area as well, but we start to generally leave that area. And you'll notice we're kind of peeling off into a piece of property that was not initially part of the park, but was obtained by Mecklenburg County as for this project, among other things, to start to create some separation. This part of the park is very active. You have the BMX course here. You have the maintenance facilities, the barn, I guess it's called, located here. You also have the play area located here. And what we wanted to do was try to give the Greenway users a little bit of separation, particularly from some of the more active sports like the BMX facility. Now, what we also do through this section of the park is start to utilize a lot of the existing infrastructure that's within the park already. There are a number of maintenance access drives, which are currently gravel. We plan to utilize those corridors. That way we're, again, capitalizing on areas that are already cleared and already maintained, and we're working around a lot of the larger vegetation. In this location, this is an example of one of those maintenance drives, and we have a picture of it following this slide. But in this location is when we also start to look at taking the trail down in width a little bit to deal with some of these environmental features. Not constraints, they're opportunities, but they're things that need to be worked around. And one of those is the dam of the existing pond here. So we start to bring the trail down to 10 feet for some sections to stay within the existing confines of the top of that dam. Oops, sorry, go back up. Leaving the dam as we start to work back around, this is another opportunity that we took to work with Mecklenburg or Charlotte Disc Golf Association, rather, to relocate some of their facilities and create, both safety and a better experience for the Greenway user, but also try to enhance the experience of the disc golf user. And this is also a section of existing maintenance drive that we're improving. You can kind of see the sidewalk, the concrete sidewalk that's located here. We're peeling off of that as part of this project and going to reconnect to that. And this is the large pavilion that you see when you come into the park initially next to the larger parking lot. So the larger parking lot, I think most people probably know where that is and what it looks like, has an existing kind of a larger sidewalk that runs the length of it and back out to Beatty's Ford Road. We intend to utilize that same corridor. We're going to remove the existing sidewalk and replace it with, again, the wider Greenway trail. And finally, we end here at Beatty's Ford Road, which, as part of this project, this is where this greenway will stop. but we're also for future connections, right? But we're also taking this opportunity to maybe create a little bit of a safer condition at Beatty's Ford and the intersection to the park. We're going to do some work with the existing driveway and rebuilding portions of that to get more separation from the Greenway user to vehicles. Currently, the existing sidewalk is really right at the edge of the travel lane. And at some point, this will connect with projects that Charlotte Department of Transportation has, sidewalk projects for the future. And from there, I will turn it back to Jennifer Brooks with Mecklenburg County.
Thanks, Jake. Can you advance the slide, please?
You know what? I'm sorry, I missed the slide. This is this is just an example of on the left. This is the existing sidewalk that we plan to repurpose as part of the Greenway. Beatty's Ford is located just out here. The middle slide is one of the maintenance, and the right slide are two of the maintenance access drives that we plan to improve with the Greenway Trail.
Thanks, Jake. All right, next slide. As Jake shared with you all, greenways are a special place because they occur in riparian corridors in the floodplain. And the infrastructure that we build that allows us to inhabit these dynamic environments has a light touch on the land. So what you're seeing here are examples of low water crossings that we're proposing, similar to what we're proposing for McIntyre, that act as bridges, but are much lower to the creek level, sit lower in the riparian corridor. Next slide, please. Neighborhood connections are greenway access points that connect to the public right-of-way, like a sidewalk or a road. And they are designed to be narrower, shorter lengths of trail to signal to users that they should move more slowly and carefully, and that they're not meant to congregate. They're simply a way in and out. And occasionally, if space allows, you might see a bench or two at a neighborhood connection. Next slide, please. Because our Greenway system follows creek corridors, our trails often fall within wetlands. When this happens, we build boardwalks to minimize impacts to these sensitive environments. When you hear the word boardwalk, you often think of a wooden structure and a wooden deck, but in fact, our boardwalk decks are made of concrete. Concrete is a more durable material and is a safer non-slip surface, particularly when it's wet for cyclists and pedestrians. Wooden and mesh boardwalk rails keep users safe from falls. Next slide, please. So all of these Greenway elements come together to build a visual language of the Greenway and the unique experience of the place. And so what you see reflected in the images on the screen are what you can expect to see when the Greenway, when McIntyre Greenway is complete. Next slide, please. The Mecklenburg County Greenway Wayfinding System pulls all of these elements together using standard signage to make the Greenway legible to users. While walking or riding along a Greenway, you may encounter system maps, trail names, mile markers, directional signage, and community landmarks. And with that, I'm going to pass the mic back to my colleague, James, who will open the floor to questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. I think Bert was going to lead us through this, and also we have Katie in the chat.
Yes. So we've got a relatively small group on the meeting tonight. So if you're more comfortable chatting in any questions or comments or anything you have, feel free to do that. If you'd if you feel confident or comfortable, you can raise your hand and unmute, and we will we'll let you ask your question or share your comment. Greg Jones. Here, let me unmute you. Give me just a second. Let's see. All
Now,
right.
can you hear me?
Yes, we got you now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
My house is located right at the end of Clarencefield, right where I guess the trail will end. I'm
Yes,
at the
sir.
corner of Clarencefield Drive and Southminster in Karen Bridge. And now a lot of people do use that access, as a matter of fact, to do everything down in there because it's a low land. People have dumped trash in that hollow. They've also done, like I said, they've done a little of everything.
Mhm.
My only concern is I'm glad to see it because I didn't want more houses to be there. I was told houses couldn't be built there because of the low land and the wetland.
That's correct.
But I'm afraid of, I don't want it to become a place for people to hang out for mischief, if you know what I mean.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I know some greenways have had places in there where people have actually gotten mugged walking through the greenway.
Mhm.
So what type of precautions have this county taken as far as safety for people walking there, especially people who live around the area?
Yeah. So what we found in terms of safety on greenways is it reflects kind of the safety of the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
We always ask that people use the trails in pairs at the very least, walking in groups, so you're not walking by yourself. The vast majority of issues that we have from a safety standpoint is actually larceny from vehicles when cars are parked and they leave some valuables kind of visible at some of the parking lots that we have.
Oh, okay.
That's 75 to 80% of the issues that we have kind of along our greenways. In terms of the dumping and things, and people hanging out, what we find is when we go in and build these trails and activate these sites, two things happen. One, people don't want to be where other people are if they're up to no good.
Mm-hmm.
And two, our park rangers in our greenway maintenance crew through our park operations division will be on the site several times a week to make sure that we don't have any accumulation of trash or anything like that. To empty our trash cans, we'll have a trash can probably at that entrance so that if anybody is walking with a water bottle or anything, they can put that there. And then on a regular basis, just patrolling from a safety standpoint, and then to go in and cut the grass and make sure that there's no limbs or trees or anything across the trail. Sometimes when we have a big storm come in, we'll have some debris or something like that that we'll have to clean up.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, Mr. Jones, I'm going to put you back on mute. And Ron has raised his hand.
Good evening. How's everyone? I'm unfortunately my electricity went out about 10 minutes ago, so I'm winging it here in the dark. Just some quick comments. As far as the walkways, and I'm seeing a lot of concrete, and I understand it's more durable permanency type of material that's used. I'm getting a little older, and those hard concrete, that hard concrete, walking on that is fairly difficult. Is there some way there could be a mix or match, between the more porous type or natural type surfaces along the walkway? And then just one other item too, as far as and I've been on some of the other calls too, and then I see we got a news clip about trash and so forth in the city.
Mm-hmm.
And I've made some recommendations about these big belly trash cans that we have that are available, accessible, can also provide some technology for Wi-Fi and that type of thing, and outlets for, charging phones and that type of thing. So is there any possibility of some of those at least being incorporated that kind of cuts down on, the necessarily pickups of trash and that type of thing as well, that you got to, have them strategically located and they can be accessible for trash, and the necessary stops to have the trash picked up by individuals could be reduced.
Got you. Yeah, so the first thing that you mentioned, the trail surface. So you're correct. On our main Greenway trails, we use asphalt and concrete for a couple of reasons. One is it's firm and stable and slip resistant. So it's an accessible facility for people of all ages and abilities. Secondly, most of our greenways, and a portion of this one, is located within the floodplain. And so we know that during major rain events or major storms, we're going to have water in this area. And in some cases, I don't know if it'll be in this case, but on some of our greenways, the trail actually goes underwater, and we want to make sure that it's there when the floodwaters recede. And so we build it to that spec. Now, most of our greenways, and I think this one included, have shoulders that are 2 to 5 feet wide. And so that would be outside of the pavement. That is typically just grass. And we do have some trail users that walk on that area, and in some cases run in that area because they do kind of cross-country running and things, and they feel that that's better on their joints. And then beyond that, we've got some of the trails within Hornets Nest Park associated with the disc golf course, and then in some of the other areas around the pond, the loop trails that are softer surface. But we want to make sure that if we did softer surface, that it's going to be there. And that is why some of our older greenways, McAlpine Creek was kind of the first one, have been converted back to being paved. Because from an environmental standpoint, if it floods, all that sediment or whatever trail material we had there gets washed into the creek. On the other item that you had regarding the big belly trash cans, we have used those trash cans in the past. We've had some issues, not necessarily on greenways, but within parks, because we don't want to put anything that has electronics within the floodplain. And we've had some success with those. I've seen them more kind of in along the streets, kind of in the city near Uptown, than I've had in other parks. Typically what we do in those cases is we have our park rangers come out more frequently and empty trash cans if we're having trash kind of stack up after an event or something like that. But we do like to put trash cans kind of along the route at our access points and then at intersection points. And those are typically places that are easy for our park rangers to get to and maintain. All right, Sherry, you are next.
Good evening. This is wonderful for us to have this opportunity to have the Greenway coming in so close to the neighborhood. I, again, am a Karen Bridge resident and just wanted to ask you a little bit. I don't live far from where the access point will be. I know you mentioned to a question a minute ago about normally there's a lot of decreased activity with people who may be up to mischief, but just wanted to ask you, is there typically increased police patrol or things like that look after the safety of the neighborhood and even people on the trail?
Yes, so that's a great question, Sherry. Thank you for that. So outside of the regular patrols that our Greenway maintenance team and our park rangers do along our trails, CMPD regularly goes along our trails as well. They have bicycles that they use. In some cases, they have motorbikes that they use. Typically, they're only using those, and those are those pursuit bikes. If there's an ongoing issue kind of within the area, they're able to get there. And then in some cases, when we've had let's say a rash of break-ins or something like that, we have a third-party security provider that does some additional patrols. And the times that we've used those have been very infrequent. And most of that has been kind of in the Midtown area, what we call kind of the uptown section of Little Sugar Creek Greenway. But we found that those issues have been few and far between. Thank you for that question. All right, Kurt, you're up.
On this, and like Sherry and Greg, we're in the Karen Bridge development, and just a couple of things, talking points and questions to ponder here. My wife and I have been here for 30 years in the neighborhood. We're back on Chow Grove Lane, which has a little piece of McIntyre Creek in behind it. A couple of things that we were curious about. Number one, will there be any kind of gate either at the Hornet's Nest entrance to the Greenway, or possibly some type of something at the junction when it connects into Clarence Field here at Karen Bridge and the Clarence Field community? That would be the one question that I had for you first. The other question would be in the park. As a softball player over 2 decades, I'm struggling for what field is in the southwest corner there at the park, but the one that would sit in the southwest quadrant, particularly when there's a north wind, there are softballs that will sail directly into the magenta line. So I'm wondering if there's not a net in place above the 10-foot fence, whether that would be considered. Also, with the flying disc golf frisbees, if you will, the discs, that also puts pedestrians and some bike riders possibly in the way of a collision. And then I guess we would be interested in what kind of lighting there might be along the path, but particularly in the neighborhood. And I think I'll speak for Mr. Jones and for Sherry here. That part of the neighborhood is on an incline. There's a 22-mile-an-hour speed limit that is not adhered to at all. It's a speedway. I am concerned about people getting hit hard, and just wanted your thoughts on all that. Thank you.
Sure. All right, I think I've got everything down. So in terms of gates, we typically don't gate our greenways, and that has more to do with there's really nowhere to end that gate. So I think earlier in the slide, Jen showed kind of how we treat most of those entrances. And so what we do is we put up bollards and posts. Sometimes we use boulders and sections of fence and landscaping to keep cars off the trail, but we don't have a way to keep people off the trail kind of later at night, because we don't want to fence, everything in, particularly in the floodplains. It would just, catch a lot of debris and stuff like that. So for that reason, we say that our greenways are open 24/7, because you can get to them and we don't have any way to kind of close them off or anything like that. In terms of the park, I don't know that I have thought about any fly balls coming out of the field there. Jen or Jake, has that been a point of discussion? And if not, I will say that yes, that is absolutely something we can look into. We do netting pretty much standard around the backstops of our fields now. And then in other circumstances, we actually have a greenway, a section of Erwin Creek Greenway that goes through Revolution Golf Course that is beside the driving range that we have a huge net up across.
Yes, I think that's correct, Bert. We definitely would look at installing anything that's going to, help the greenway be safer. So that is definitely a possibility.
Yep. In terms of potential interaction with the disc golf course, we had to realign a few of those holes, and we did that with the thought that we want to reduce, if at all possible, any kind of impact or collision between the intersection of people playing disc golf and folks on the trail going one way or the other. So we've done the best that we can, And I believe we've been able to leave, in most cases, some vegetation, some trees and things of that nature kind of in those areas. I don't know if we've got any tree planting planned currently within this project, but if we need to, we could work with our partners at Project Relief or Trees Charlotte and add some trees within those areas to go in and provide a little bit more cover or separation there. And then lighting, I think, was the last item that you had. So typically we don't add lighting along our trails just because mostly we're in the floodplain. Now it's a little different when we're going through a park. We do have lighting within portions of that park because we have areas with the pavilion and the barn and the courts and the fields where we have activity going on after dark, particularly this time of year when it gets dark a little bit earlier. In terms of adding lighting, we don't have anything within the scope right now, but we could work with the city or with Duke Energy, who we do a lot of leasing of our lights in some of our parks and things like that, to look at the lighting levels along Clarence Field. We also do wayfinding signage along the Greenway, and we could also work with the City Department of Transportation on making sure that we've got signage on either side of the Greenway entrance there that would warn drivers that there's, you know, potential for pedestrians crossing the road in that area. All right, let's see. I think we've had a chat question, and it looks like Nick was asking a very similar question to what Greg was asking about in terms of kind of trash in an active dumping area in there. We're dealing with a similar issue on a park project that we're working on just north of Uptown. And again, since we've been out there doing some small updates before the big update, we've noticed less activity in that area. It's also an area that's going to be redeveloping here pretty soon. And so there'll be more people and more eyes on kind of in those areas. I will say that if there are issues that come up, you can call 311 and let them know about, you know, any trash or anything like that. Or you could call our Park and Recreation office. Our main line is 980-314-1000. I'll write that in the chat. Sherry, you just raised your hand again. I'll let you go ahead and unmute.
Can you talk a little bit more about the wayfinding signage you said you all will have? Like, would it just be right there on Clarence Field? Would it go all the way up out to Sunset? How far is it, and where would you all be directing people to that Clarence Field start of the trail?
So the slide here shows kind of a sample of what we have along the trail. So we have like a main ID sign. We'll have that kind of as part of the sign for Hornets Nest Park. We'll have a smaller ID sign off of Clarence Field and Troll that lets you know, and that's kind of like the bottom left sign there. And it lets you know what Greenway you're going on and what entrance you're at. So it gives you a sense of where you are. And then the large photo on the right shows one of our mile markers. And it'll let you know when you're at a quarter mile, half mile, 3/4 of a mile, and 1 mile. We do those at 1/4 of a mile segments. We're also in the process of implementing a new program where each one of those mile markers are going to be geolocated. In case of an emergency, you could call 911 and let them know that you're on McIntyre Creek Greenway at mile 3/4, and they would know exactly where you are and the quickest way to get to where you are there. We also have some educational signage that's a part of some of these Greenway packages. And we have trail etiquette signage that goes along there as well. This will be located along the entire stretch of the Greenway. So at each entrance, and then kind of along the Greenway as it moves through the park and along the creek there. Oh, unmute real quick.
So it's not promotional type signage?
No. We'll have this, we'll show this as part of our overall network. And then in some cases, we'll go in and do kind of an area specific, but we wouldn't show a parking symbol at clearance field or troll. Part of the reason that we like going through our parks, one is to connect more people to the parks who don't have direct connection there now. But two, it allows us to double dip in our infrastructure. So we're able to use the parking and the restrooms that we have within the park for the park, but for the Greenway as well. Kirk, you had another question.
I did. Thank you, sir.
Mhm.
Bert, I just wanted to kind of follow up on what Sherry and Greg had talked about, particularly coming down from the top of the hill on Clarence Field. One thing that I just want you to be aware of is that people break that 22-mile-an-hour speed limit a lot, especially coming down the hill. And my fear is, especially kids who might be exiting the Greenway out to the street or making a looping turn or anything like that. I just have fear for myself because just walking around there, I've almost been hit. And I'm pretty easy to spot. I'm 6 feet tall, my dog, my wife. That would be one. And thank you on the netting. I know that's a different issue in the park, but I do play down at Revolution quite a bit. I'm familiar with the net that goes along the driving range to protect the creek. That and the nets that Charlotte Mecklenburg Parks and Rec put up at Park Road, particularly on field 2, I believe it is, to keep the fly balls, the home runs out of the parking lot. That's been highly effective. So if that's what you're talking about, I think it's a great idea. I think you guys are out in front of that one. But I just wanted to raise the concern again, not with the Greenway, but it's the people here in the neighborhood who it gets dicey, especially that's the most dangerous piece of street in the two neighborhoods. So I just wanted you to be aware of that.
Yeah. Are there any speed bumps along that road now?
There aren't enough of them, and they're not big enough.
Okay. All right.
I'm sure there are.
Yeah, I think we can go out and take a look at it. We don't have the authority to go out and build a speed bump there. Typically, that has to be led by the neighborhood, and that goes through the Charlotte Department of Transportation. But that's a group that we have constant contact with, and so we could pass that concern along. And if it's something that the neighborhood would like to push for, we would be supportive of it for sure. Hey, Greg. Let's see, unmute yourself real quick, or we'll get you unmuted. Nope, you're still muted. Let's see. All right, I think we got you now.
Okay, I was just wanting to, in closing, say that I am more than happy that this is the decision that was made to do with this land. I was, like I said, I live right in front of it, and I've been always concerned about what eventually will be going up over there because, you know, they're building all around us. And I definitely didn't want, you know, another type of builder coming in and building houses because you never know what they're going to put up. So for me personally, and like I said, I'm more directly affected by it because it's just literally, it's going to be right at my front door.
Sure.
The entrance. So I'm glad to see it from on my end. I'm really glad to see it.
Well, that's great. That's great to hear. We find that, you know, a lot of neighborhoods embrace, you know, their greenways, and it becomes an extension of your front yard or your front porch. If you're on a regular schedule, you see the same people out there, and it builds a sense of community or strengthens the sense of community that you have there now. Let's see, do we have a final slide that's got any project contact information on there?
Hey, Bert, before you go, I would like to echo Mr. Jones. Thank you all for doing this. This is something that I never thought our neighborhood would have. And so this is really, really, when I got my little postcard, I was sure to go and sign up for this meeting. This is really, really wonderful. So thank you very much.
Well, that's great to hear.
That's
You're very welcome. And we're the ones that are a little bit late to the party. This was originally a 2008 bond project, and then we had the recession occur. And as part of that, a lot of those active, the funding sources that we had, we weren't able to use. And so the county commissioners approved this as part of our current capital improvement plan back 4 years ago in 2017 or 2016, I guess. And these are the projects that we're still working through. So we would build even more if we could right now, but this is what we have the money to do. So this is what we're going to do. If you go back one slide real quick, Jake, I think we had just if you're on social media or if you're online, Mecklenburg County Park and Rec is there as well, parkandrec.com, or you can find us at Mech Park Rec on really Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And on our website, you can sign up for programs. You can go to the Park Explorer and look at all the parks that we have in our system. And even you can search by park amenity. If you wanted to know where all the tennis courts were, you could search by tennis courts. The final slide that we've got is the contact information of our project team. And I believe this information is also available on the publicinput.com/McIntyre website where you went to sign up for tonight. So on there, probably starting tomorrow sometime, we'll have the link to this presentation on there. We'll have a PDF file if you'd like to download the slides that we had to refamiliarize yourself or to share that with anybody who wasn't able to join us tonight. So thank you all for your questions. It shows that you care about your community, and we hope that what we do here is going to further improve the community that you guys clearly love and enjoy. So unless you have anything else, have a good evening, and thank you so much for participating.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.